Dr. Eleanor Chen squinted at the holographic display floating before her, the alien signal patterns pulsing in rhythmic sequences that had defied interpretation by 17 of Earth's top xenolinguists. Her cramped university lab at MIT was littered with empty coffee cups and discarded neural algorithm printouts, testament to 3 sleepless days since the signal had been intercepted from Ta City. Adaptive encryption, she muttered, fingers dancing through the light field to rearrange symbol clusters. They're not using a static key. Outside her window, the Boston skyline of 2187 glittered with the arcing lights of orbital shuttles, ferrying passengers to off-world colonies. Humanity had expanded confidently across the solar system over the past century. Thriving settlements on Mars housed over 5 million colonists, while the research stations on Europa and the mining communities on Titan represented humanity's farthest permanent outposts. Earth remained the heart of human civilization, but for the first time in history, nearly a third of the human population lived among the stars. Eleanor's quantum pad chimed, interrupting her concentration. The United Nations Space Command insignia rotated above the screen. Dr. Chen, came a clipped voice without preamble. This is Admiral Zhao. How soon can you be in Geneva? She frowned. I'm in the middle off. Your university has been informed. There's a hypersonic waiting at Logan. Pack for an extended stay. The connection terminated before she could respond. Eleanor stared at the silent display, then at the signal pattern still hovering in the air. Something in the Admiral's tone sent a chill through her that had nothing to do with the lab's temperature. 6 hours later, her credentials were being scanned at UST headquarters, a gleaming complex nestled against Lake Geneva. Armed guards with facial recognition visors escorted her through security protocols far more rigorous than she'd experienced during previous consultant work. The others are waiting, said the lieutenant, leading her through a final security checkpoint into a windowless conference room 3 levels underground. 12 grim-faced military and scientific leaders sat around a polished table, their quiet conversations ceasing as she entered. Admiral Zhao, a compact woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too many conflicts during the resource wars, nodded toward an empty chair. Dr. Chen, thank you for coming quickly. Eleanor settled into the indicated seat, noting the classified holograms suspended above the table, star maps, signal patterns similar to what she'd been studying, and what appeared to be debris field analyses. Your encryption algorithm, Zhao continued without pleasantries, managed to decode a segment of the transmission that 17 other specialists couldn't crack. That's why you're here. A data crystal slid across the polished surface. Eleanor picked it up hesitantly. This isn't public knowledge, Chen, the Admiral said, her voice lowering. What you're about to see doesn't leave this room. Eleanor inserted the crystal into the table's interface. The room darkened as a new projection filled the air. A vast armada of ships, unlike any human vessel, moving in perfect formation through an unfamiliar star system. The footage showed planetary bodies in the system glowing red-hot before shattering entirely. This footage was recovered from a destroyed probe near Proxima Centauri, said a silver-haired man she recognized as the UNSC director. It's the 3rd civilization they've destroyed, and their trajectory. He made a gesture, and the star map expanded, a glowing line connecting 3 devastated star systems before extending directly to Sol. The signal isn't a greeting, Zhao said flatly. It's a countdown. Commander Alejandro Reyes stood on the bridge of the ESS Thunderchild, watching the holographic tactical display as his small battle group of 7 vessels held position among Neptune's icy rings. Earth had mobilized with unprecedented speed, but the Harvester advanced scouts had outpaced even the most pessimistic projections. They've crossed Pluto's orbit, Commander, Lieutenant Park reported, her voice steady despite the implications. 32 vessels, moving in perfect formation. Estimated arrival in our sector, 17 minutes. Reyes nodded, the scar from the Mars insurgency pulling tight across his cheek. He hadn't expected to see combat again after that nightmare. Certainly not against an enemy that had already extinguished 3 civilizations. "Status of the quantum weaponry?" he asked, turning to his weapons officer. "Online but untested in actual combat, sir. Simulations give us a 63% probability of penetrating their shields based on the probe data. Better odds than I had on Mars," Rise remarked, earning a few nervous chuckles from his bridge crew. Veterans all, handpicked for this mission that military command had already designated a calculated sacrifice. Rise studied Neptune's rings on the display, an idea forming. "Lieutenant Park, plot a new position. I want every ship powered down and drifting here." He indicated a dense section of the ring. "Spread out, but no more than 30 seconds sublight travel between vessels." His executive officer, Commander Alvarez, frowned. "Sir, that would leave us completely vulnerable when they arrive." "Exactly." Rise smiled thinly. "We're going to look like abandoned vessels, or better yet, debris." Understanding dawned on Alvarez's face. A trap. "The first rule of asymmetric warfare," Rise confirmed. "When outmatched, change the nature of the engagement." 16 minutes later, the Thunderchild drifted silently among Neptune's rings, its reactor core cool, life support systems running on minimal power. The other 6 vessels of the battle group were similarly dark, scattered throughout the ring like forgotten relics. "Multiple contacts approaching," whispered the sensor officer through the ship's emergency comm system. "They're slowing to investigate the ring system." Rise watched through the viewport as enormous vessels appeared, moving with eerie precision. Their hulls seemed to absorb rather than reflect light, creating shadow ships against Neptune's blue glow. They were completely unlike anything human imagination had conceived, not the sleek designs of Earth vessels or the utilitarian blocks of Martian ships, but organic-seeming structures with pulsating sections that expanded and contracted like breathing lungs. "My God," someone whispered on the bridge. "Steady," Rise cautioned, watching the lead scout ships approach the ring. "Let them get close." The aliens moved with growing confidence, apparently detecting no active threats. 3 vessels entered the ring directly, passing between the scattered human ships, sensors probing the debris field. "They're scanning us," the tactical officer reported. "But they're registering us as inactive." Rise waited until the Harvester command vessel was fully committed to the ring passage. His hand hovered over the emergency restart sequence. "All ships," he transmitted on the encrypted battle channel. "Execute Phoenix protocol on my mark." The closest Harvester vessel was less than a kilometer from the Thunderchild now, a behemoth 50 times their size. "Perfect." "Mark." 7 human warships simultaneously roared to life, power surging through systems, weapons charging. Before the Harvesters could respond, the Thunderchild's experimental quantum cannons fired at point-blank range, the energy beam cutting through the alien vessel's hull like paper. Across the ring, similar scenes played out as the human vessels unleashed everything they had. For one glorious incandescent moment, humanity had the upper hand. 3 Harvester vessels erupted in silent explosions, their organic mechanical hulls peeling apart in the vacuum. A 4th spun out of control, venting atmosphere and some viscous fluid that crystallized instantly in the cold of space. "Direct hits," shouted the tactical officer. 4 confirmed kills. But the moment passed too quickly. The surviving Harvester vessels responded with terrifying efficiency, their initial surprise giving way to coordinated counterattack. Energy weapons unlike anything humans had encountered lashed out, bypassing shields designed to counter conventional attacks. "They're adapting to our weapon signatures," reported the science officer, her voice rising in pitch. "Each time we hit them, their shields reconfigure." The ESS Valiant, a destroyer on the far side of the formation, took a direct hit and shattered into a million fragments. The Intrepid followed moments later, its reactor core breached in a flash that briefly outshone Neptune itself. "Evasive maneuvers," Rise ordered as the Thunderchild shuddered under enemy fire. "Randomize weapon frequencies. Don't give them patterns to adapt to." But it was already becoming clear that the initial advantage of surprise had evaporated. The remaining human vessels fought valiantly, scoring hits where they could, but the harvesters were learning with every exchange. Worse, the damaged alien ships were visibly regenerating, their hulls knitting back together before the crew's disbelieving eyes. "Hull breach on decks 7 through 12, reported Alvarez, gripping the console as another impact rocked the ship. Weapons down to 40% capacity. 3 more harvester vessels approaching from the outer system. Ray stared at the tactical display, watching as the main harvester fleet accelerated from beyond Pluto's orbit. Their trajectory would take them straight past Neptune and toward the inner planets, toward Mars, toward Earth. He had failed, but perhaps not completely. Dr. Eleanor Chen hadn't slept in 72 hours. The converted research facility, deep within the Himalayan mountains, hummed with desperate activity, but her lab remained isolated, a sanctuary of concentration surrounded by chaos. Holographic projections of harvester communication patterns filled the air around her, pulsing with an almost hypnotic rhythm. Every few seconds, the pattern would shift as her algorithms processed new data from the Neptune encounter. "You're missing it," she muttered to herself, eyes burning from stimulant drops. "It's not a language. It's not a code. It's something else." The data recovered from the ESS Thunderchild's final transmission had given them precious insights. The strange quantum fluctuations detected just before Commander Raya's sacrifice suggested a communication method far beyond current human understanding. Conventional encryption algorithms treated it as noise, but Chen suspected it was the key to everything. She adjusted the holographic display, reconfiguring the pattern into a 3-dimensional lattice. Instead of processing the signals as sequential data, she began mapping them as simultaneous quantum states, entangled particles existing in multiple positions simultaneously. The pattern suddenly transformed, its chaotic elements resolving into a neural-like network. "My God," she whispered, watching the connections form and dissolve in patterns reminiscent of human brain activity. "They're not communicating. They're sharing consciousness." The revelation hit her like a physical blow. The harvesters weren't exchanging information. They were a distributed mind, experiencing reality simultaneously across multiple vessels. No wonder their coordination was perfect. They operated as a single organism. Chen staggered to her feet, reaching for the communication terminal just as her overtaxed body finally surrendered to exhaustion. She collapsed, the room spinning around her as darkness closed in. When she awoke in the medical bay 12 hours later, she immediately demanded a secure line to UNSC headquarters. Half a world away, Colonel Diane Way stood before her brother's empty grave at Arlington Memorial Gardens. Captain James Way had commanded the ESS Dauntless at Neptune, his ship among the first destroyed in the battle. His body, like so many others, would never be recovered. The holographic memorial projected his image above the marker, James in his dress uniform, smiling with the confidence that had defined him since childhood. "I'll make it count," Way whispered, her voice steady despite the grief that had become her constant companion. She removed her command insignia, the triple stars of a full colonel, and placed it at the base of the marker. A farewell gesture. Where she was going, rank would mean little. Her neural implant chimed with an incoming priority message, the UNSC director himself, requesting her immediate presence at the White House. The Oval Office, the summons she'd been both expecting and dreading. 3 hours later, she stood at parade rest before the President and the Joint Chiefs, her proposal laid out in stark terms. "Conventional warfare is suicide against this enemy," she concluded. "They adapt too quickly, learn too fast. We need asymmetric tactics, unconventional weapons, and soldiers willing to think like monsters. And you believe you can build this, Operation Wrath?" asked the President, her expression grave. "I've already begun recruiting, Madam President. Not from active military. They're too disciplined, too predictable. I need people the harvesters can't anticipate." Way activated her neural implant, projecting personnel files into the air before them. Faces appeared, men and women with brilliant but troubled histories. Aisha Okello, former eco-terrorist and guerrilla tactician. Ryu Hayashi, 17-year-old hacker who penetrated UNSC security for fun last year. Dr. Pranav Mehta, whose bioweapon research was deemed too extreme even during the resource wars. The defense secretary scowled. These people are criminals. Security risks. Yes, Wei agreed without hesitation. And they're exactly what we need. The harvesters expect rational behavior. Military discipline. These people think differently, act unpredictably. In this war, that's our only advantage. Silence fell over the Oval Office as the president considered. Finally, she nodded once. Operation Wrath is authorized. Colonel, full autonomy, unlimited resources. You answer only to me. Wei saluted crisply. Thank you, Madam President. Don't thank me, came the grim reply. I've just authorized our last resort. If you fail, there won't be anyone left to court-martial you. Wei's first meeting with Dr. Chen at UNSC headquarters became legendary among the staff. The scholar and the soldier, both brilliant, both stubborn, clashed immediately over fundamentally different approaches to the harvester threat. We can't just blow them up, Chen shouted, gesturing wildly at her neural network projections. They're a connected consciousness. Destroy one ship, and the others learn instantly. Each attack makes them stronger. And while you dissect their psychology, Wei countered, her voice cold with fury. They're destroying our outposts. Mars has less than a week before they arrive. What do you suggest we tell the colonists? Hold on while we study their brain patterns. Their argument escalated until military police had to intervene, resulting in both women being locked in a secure conference room by the exasperated UNSC director. Work it out, he ordered. Neither of you leaves until you have a plan both of you can execute. The evacuation order from UNSC Command appeared on every screen in Olympus City, the largest settlement on Mars. Governor Malik Al-Farsi read it twice before switching to a secure channel that connected him to the other 5 major colonial hubs spread across the Red Planet. You've all received it, he said, not a question but a statement. The faces of his fellow administrators nodded solemnly. Thoughts. Sophia Mbeki, administrator of Acidalia Planitia, spoke first. 10 million people. Even with every available ship, we'd only evacuate 30% before the harvesters arrive. And that 30% would lead the aliens directly to Earth, added Director Chen Gonzalez of the Valles Marineris Mining Collective, her weathered face grim with resolve. If we run, we die anyway. But if we stay, we can fight. Al-Farsi finished. His decision made, he opened a public channel to all Martian settlements. The message was simple, 3 words that would echo through human history. Mars stands firm. Within hours, the response to Earth's evacuation order was transmitted. A unified refusal from all colonial administrators. What followed was a flurry of increasingly urgent UNSC messages, culminating in a direct communication from the President herself. Al-Farsi's reply became legendary. Madam President, Mars was never just a colony. For 60 years, we've terraformed this hellscape, buried our dead in its soil, and birthed the first generation of true Martians. We won't abandon our home. Instead, we offer Earth the most precious resource in this war: time. Throughout the Martian settlements, industrial facilities transformed overnight. The massive atmospheric processors that had been gradually making Mars breathable were reconfigured to generate targeted dust storms, dense enough to blind sensors and strip the hulls of spacecraft. Mining equipment designed to excavate ore became drilling platforms for bunkers and tunnel networks. Terraforming lasers meant to melt polar ice for water were converted into defensive weapons. Director Chen Gonzalez, a former asteroid miner with intimate knowledge of explosive physics, oversaw the placement of charges throughout the extensive tunnel networks beneath the major settlements. We know this terrain, she told her teams as they laid the explosives. They don't. Every meter they advance will cost them. The harvesters arrive precisely on schedule, their advance fleet appearing as dark specks against the pink Martian sky. Colonial sensors tracked them as they established standard orbital positions, the same formation they had used at Neptune, and presumably against the 3 civilizations they had already consumed. Governor Al-Farsi watched from the command center beneath Olympus Mons as the first harvester landing craft descended toward the Elysium Basin, a flat plain where their sensors detected the largest concentration of human technology, exactly as the Martians had planned. Now, he ordered. Across the basin, subsurface charges detonated in a precisely timed sequence. The ground, seemingly solid but actually underlaid with recently mapped ice deposits, collapsed in massive sinkholes. 3 harvester landing craft, each carrying hundreds of ground troops, disappeared into the suddenly formed chasms. The 4th managed to veer away, only to be caught in a barrage of fire from converted terraforming lasers. First blood to Mars, someone whispered in the command center. But the victory was short-lived. The harvesters, learning with terrifying speed, adapted their approach. The next wave landed well away from settlements, establishing beachheads in the rugged highlands where subsurface explosives couldn't be effectively planted. What followed was 3 weeks of the most brutal fighting humanity had ever experienced. The Martian colonists, never trained as soldiers, but intimately familiar with survival in hostile conditions, fought with desperate ingenuity. Mining drones were rigged with explosives. Maintenance bots were programmed to swarm harvester units. The atmospheric processors generated dust storms so thick that advanced alien sensors became useless, forcing them to fight blind while the colonists navigated through memorized routes. Throughout it all, Director Chen Gonzalez's guerrilla squads struck from the tunnel networks, emerging from hidden entrances to attack, then disappearing before the harvesters could respond effectively. They fought not to win. Victory was impossible, but to delay, to cost the enemy time and resources, to force them to adapt to new tactics again and again. In the 3rd week, a particularly daring raid led by Chen Gonzalez herself managed to capture a damaged harvester scout ship that had crash-landed near Esidalia. Working frantically as alien reinforcements approached, her team stripped crucial components and biological samples from the vessel. "Get this to the orbital launcher," she ordered, handing a sealed container to her youngest team member. "It needs to reach Earth. Dr. Chen needs to see what we found." The data package launched successfully, its small craft accelerating away from Mars just as Chen Gonzalez's position was overrun. Her final transmission accompanied the package. "We've got their neural patterns. Make it count." After 3 weeks of fighting that cost the harvesters nearly a quarter of their advance force, they resorted to orbital bombardment. Massive energy weapons began systematically destroying Martian settlements from space. Governor Al-Farsi, watching from the main control center at Olympus Mons as his world burned, knew the time had come for their final act of defiance. The fusion reactor network, 37 plants spread across the planet that powered the colonies and terraforming efforts, had been rigged for simultaneous detonation. It was a plan they had prepared from the first day, their ultimate sacrifice if all else failed. Earth's cities emptied into vast underground complexes as the harvester fleet approached. Once mighty nations dissolved into a single imperative: survive. The sacrifice of Mars had bought humanity 3 precious weeks, time Dr. Chen and Colonel Wei had used to the fullest. In a subterranean laboratory beneath the ruins of C. Arnon, Dr. Chen worked without sleep, her movements mechanical after days sustained only by military-grade stimulants. The Martian data package had been worth the sacrifice. Biological samples and neural patterns from the captured harvester scout ship provided the final pieces she needed. "It's beautiful," she whispered, her hands moving through the 3-dimensional projection of the harvester's quantum entanglement network. Intricate patterns bloomed and faded like synapses firing in a vast brain. "And now I know exactly how to break it." The disruptor she designed resembled an ornate puzzle box, its surface etched with circuitry that mimicked harvester neural pathways, but contained a fatal paradox, a technological virus that would cascade through their entanglement network. Where their communication created perfect unity, her device would create catastrophic dissonance. Meanwhile, deep in a repurposed missile silo in the Rocky Mountains, Colonel Wei's unconventional forces trained relentlessly. They called themselves Earth's Wrath, a name that had spread through resistance cells worldwide, becoming a symbol of humanity's refusal to surrender. Again, Wei barked as her team staggered through the simulation for the 14th time. The converted harvester shuttle they'd salvaged from Neptune's debris field had been meticulously reconstructed, but operating it required rewiring human neural pathways to interface with alien systems. They learned from every encounter, she reminded her exhausted operators. So must we. The plan they had developed seemed impossible. A small strike team would infiltrate the Harvester command ship using the rebuilt alien shuttle, while Earth's remaining military forces launched a simultaneous but doomed frontal assault, not to win, but to occupy the Harvester's attention. Final briefing. Wei announced to the volunteers assembled in the command center, "I'll be direct. This is a suicide mission. Insertion probability is 32%. Survival probability is 0. Every hand in the room raised to volunteer anyway. We selected her team with brutal efficiency, herself to lead, Chen to calibrate the disruptor, Sato Yuki, a space elevator maintenance engineer whose zero-G mobility was unmatched, Dr. Nwanika Okoi, whose deep-sea mining explosives had been adapted for vacuum, and Miguel Rodriguez, a former corporate AI security hacker who'd spent weeks interfacing with salvaged harvester tech. The night before launch, Wei found Chen staring at Earth's distant blue curve from an observation port. Mars glowed faintly in the distance, its southern hemisphere still burning from the colony's final act of defiance. "If we fail tomorrow," Chen said without turning, "that's it. Everything that ever mattered. Gone." "Then we don't fail," Wei answered simply. The launch went smoothly, the shuttle's stealth systems functioning beyond expectations. Earth dwindled behind them as they accelerated toward the approaching harvester fleet, now just beyond lunar orbit. The rebuilt shuttles mimicked harvester signatures initially fooled the outer defenses, allowing them to approach the massive command vessel undetected. Then everything went wrong. Energy spike. Rodriguez shouted, his neural interface with the shuttle systems showing cascading alerts. They've upgraded their authentication protocols since Mars. Proximity alarms howled as targeting systems locked onto their vessel. The harvesters had adapted once again, now scanning specifically for human biosignatures beneath their stolen technology. Wei made a split-second decision, venting atmosphere from half the shuttle, the half containing 3 support crew members whose sections were already compromised by incoming fire. Their bodies tumbled into space, creating a debris field that momentarily confused harvester targeting systems. Full power to forward shields. Wei ordered, redirecting the shuttle toward a maintenance hatch visible on the command ship's hull. "We're going in hot." The shuttle slammed into the massive harvester vessel at nearly full speed, crumpling like tissue paper but successfully breaching the outer hull. The impact killed 2 more team members and destroyed most of their equipment. Klaxons shrieked as the harvester vessel's automated systems responded to the breach. Cut off from Earth and presumed dead, the 5 survivors, Wei, Chen, Sato, Okoi, and Rodriguez, gathered in the smoking wreckage. Each carried a portion of the disruptor, designed to be assembled only at the target to prevent detection. "Status," we demanded, applying a pressure seal to a gash in her environment suit. "The disruptor components are intact," Chen confirmed, checking the specialized container she'd protected with her body during the crash. "I can interface with their systems," Rodriguez added, neural filaments extending from his implants to connect with a damaged harvester panel. "But they know we're here." Security drones converging from all directions. "Then we move," we decided, checking her weapon. Rodriguez, find us a path to the central hub. Okoi, Prepare charges to cover our retreat. Sato, take point. Chen, stay center. Our only mission now is delivering that disruptor to the core. Everything else is secondary. They pushed deeper into the alien vessel, moving through corridors that pulsed with an unsettling organic rhythm. What they discovered defied nightmare. Vast chambers contained preserved specimens from dozens of extinct civilizations, beings suspended in translucent fluid, still alive but dissected, their biological and technological uniqueness integrated into the Harvester Collective. These monsters, Okoi whispered, her hand tightening on her weapon. They don't conquer, they consume. And we're just the latest course, Rodriguez finished grimly, his neural implants extracting data from a terminal. The central hub is 12 levels down, but they're reconfiguring internal defenses to trap us. We need to move now. As they descended through the labyrinthine vessel, Earth's combined military forces initiated their desperate distraction. Every surviving ship and weapon platform engaged the Harvester fleet in Earth orbit, not with any hope of victory, but to draw attention away from the infiltration team carrying humanity's last hope. The strike team fought through increasingly bizarre sections of the Harvester vessel, each more nightmarish than the last. During a brief respite hidden within a maintenance shaft, Rodriguez accessed deeper layers of the ship's systems through his neural implants, his face growing pale as information flooded his consciousness. They're not a single species, he finally explained, voice hollow with horror. The Harvesters began as one race, but they've incorporated parts of every civilization they've conquered, biologically, technologically. The ship itself is partially organic. These walls contain nervous tissue from dozens of species. As if responding to his words, the corridor pulsed rhythmically. It's breathing, whispered Sato. We motioned them forward, following Rodriguez's mental map toward the central hub. Harvester security drones hunted them through the ship, not mechanical constructs but grotesque amalgamations of cybernetics and biological components harvested from conquered species. The team moved in practiced formation, Sato's zero-G maneuverability allowing her to scout ahead, while Okoi set charges behind them to slow pursuit. 12 hours into the mission, they reached a vast spherical chamber unlike anything they'd seen before. Thousands of transparent pods lined the walls, each containing a being suspended in luminescent fluid, representatives from species across the galaxy. The preserved, Rodriguez translated from a nearby terminal. Chosen specimens kept intact rather than harvested. Why? Asked Okoi, examining the nearest pod containing a crystalline entity with multiple limbs. Redundancy, Chen realized, studying the neural connections. They're backups. If the collective needs to access original memories or capabilities, they tap directly into these specimens. Sato suddenly froze before one pod, her face draining of color. Inside floated a human woman, eyes closed, neural filaments connecting her brain to the ship's systems. The ID tag on her suspended animation pod read Seihyo Haruka, Europea Research Station. My sister, Sato choked, pressing her hand against the transparent surface. She disappeared on a shuttle flight 3 years ago. We thought it was an accident. Further investigation revealed dozens of humans captured during covert operations before the invasion. Scientists, military personnel, civilians from remote outposts, all still alive, their minds forcibly linked to the Harvester Collective. The moral dilemma became devastatingly clear. The quantum disruptor would kill all beings connected to the Harvester consciousness, including these prisoners. Chen frantically ran simulations on her portable unit, searching for alternatives. There has to be another way, she insisted, fingers dancing across holographic controls. A way to target only the Harvester core consciousness. If we don't activate the disruptor, 8 billion people die. Wei countered, her voice steady though her eyes revealed her own torment. Everyone on Earth. Everyone you've ever known. But they're innocent, Chen argued, gesturing at the pods. They never chose this. Neither did we. Wei responded simply. Sato stood immobile before her sister's pod. "I'll stay with her," she said quietly. "Until the end." Proximity alarms suddenly shrieked from Rodriguez's neural display. Multiple security units converging on our position. 2 minutes max. Chen grabbed the disruptor components from Wastepack. "I need 30 minutes, she insisted. "The preserved are connected differently than the core consciousness. I can modify the targeting parameters, create a buffer that might spare them. And if you can't," we demanded. "Then we all die together," Chen answered. "But we try first. That's what makes us human, isn't it? The irrational persistence they fear so much." Wei nodded slightly, the ghost of a smile crossing her face. "Okoi, set charges at all entrances. Rodriguez, help me establish a defensive perimeter. We're buying Chen 30 minutes." As they prepared their last stand, Sato approached Chen, determination replacing grief on her face. "My sister's neural interface. It might help calibrate your modifications. I can establish a direct connection through my implants." "It could kill you both," Chen warned. "We're already dead," Sato replied calmly. "Make it count." Outside the preservation chamber, Wei and her team faced wave after wave of Harvester security drones. Their ammunition dwindled with each assault, forcing them to improvise weapons from captured alien technology. Okoi's mining explosives proved surprisingly effective against the biological components of the security units, creating localized electromagnetic pulses that temporarily disrupted their neural functions. Inside, Chen worked feverishly, while Sato established a tenuous connection to her sister's pod, neural filaments extending from her implants to interface with the harvester system. Through this connection, Chen gained unprecedented insight into the structure of the collective consciousness and discovered something unexpected. "The preserved aren't just connected to the network," she told Sato, voice rising with excitement. "They're suppressed within it. The harvesters fear them. Fear what would happen if their individual consciousness reasserted." "Can you use that?" Sato asked, wincing as alien data patterns flooded her mind. "Yes," Chen replied, modifying the disruptor's core algorithms. "Instead of destroying the network, we can destabilize the suppression protocols. Create a cascading failure that gives the preserved a chance to reassert their individual consciousness." A massive explosion rocked the chamber as harvester forces breached one of the outer barriers. Wei's voice came through their comms, tense but controlled. "Whatever you're doing, do it faster. We're out of time." Chen worked feverishly on the disruptor while Wei, Okoi, and Rodriguez maintained a desperate last stand against waves of harvester security drones in the narrow corridor leading to the preservation chamber. They were running out of ammunition, out of options, and out of time. "Almost there," Chen called, her fingers dancing across the disruptor's intricate components. "I need 2 more minutes." "We don't have 2 minutes," Wei shouted back as a massive Bechtel harvester unit tore through their makeshift barricade. The creature, part machine, part biological components from a dozen different species, loomed over them, its weaponized limbs glowing with energy. In a shocking move, Sato disconnected from her sister's neural interface and leaped directly into the path of the attacking unit. "Yes, we do," she said calmly, before deliberately impaling herself on the harvester's blade-like appendage. The moment her blood touched the biological components of the harvester unit, it froze, confused by the voluntary self-sacrifice it couldn't comprehend. Its neural system glitched, trying to process a behavior pattern outside its experience parameters. The delay bought Chen the precious seconds she needed. "It's done," she called, the modified disruptor humming with energy. The preserve should be buffered from the worst effects. Wei didn't waste time on acknowledgement. She grabbed the device, and with Okoi and Rodriguez covering her, charged toward the central neural hub, a pulsating mass of biological and technological components that served as the command center for the entire Harvester collective. Meanwhile, Acting UNSC Director Yasmin Khan watched from the last remaining command bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains as humanity's final defenders threw themselves against the overwhelming alien force. Every surviving ship and weapon system engaged the Harvester fleet as it began its final approach to Earth. Fighter pilots on suicide runs, orbital defense platforms firing until their systems melted. Civilian vessels converted to makeshift bombs. Not to win. No one believed victory was possible anymore, but to distract. "They've breached the outer defense grid," reported a junior officer, voice steady despite the implications. Above them, holographic displays showed the Harvester fleet penetrating Earth's orbital defenses with methodical precision. "Hold as long as you can," Khan ordered. "Colonel Wee needs time." Inside the Harvester vessel, Y reached the central hub, a cathedral-like space dominated by a writhing mass of neural tissue and crystalline technology. The composite consciousness of the Harvesters pulsed visibly, tendrils of energy connecting it to every part of the fleet. "This is for Mars," Y whispered as she activated the disruptor and plunged it directly into the neural mass. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. Then the ship trembled, a high-pitched keening sound emanating from the walls themselves. The neural mass convulsed, its energy patterns destabilizing in cascading waves. On Earth, military observers watched in astonishment as the perfectly coordinated Harvester fleet suddenly began to move erratically. Ships collided with each other. Energy weapons fired in random directions. "What the hell?" breathed Director Khan, leaning forward as the tactical display showed Harvester vessels turning on one another. The effect was more dramatic than Chen predicted. The disruptor's modified signal hadn't simply disrupted the collective coordination. It had destabilized the suppressors holding the absorbed consciousnesses in check. Centuries of consumed minds, from dozens of conquered species, suddenly reasserted themselves within the collective. The Harvester fleet tore itself apart in what could only be described as a civil war between competing consciousnesses. "It's working," Rodriguez exclaimed, neural filaments connected to a ship's terminal displaying the cascade throughout the fleet. "The suppressed consciousnesses are fighting for control." Chen watched in fascination as the preserve began to stir in their pods, consciousness returning to eyes that had been vacant for untold years. "They're waking up," she whispered. "All of them." Earth forces, though decimated, pressed their advantage. Khan made the call to deploy the Lazarus Protocol, a desperate gamble first proposed and rejected as too extreme during the resource wars. "Initiate sequence," she ordered, voice unwavering as she entered her authorization code. "God forgive us." Nuclear warheads detonated in precise patterns throughout Earth's upper atmosphere, creating a cascading electromagnetic pulse that disabled both the remaining Harvester technology and Earth's own infrastructure. The planet went dark, power grids failing, communication systems collapsing worldwide. But the Harvester ships fell from the sky like dead things, their neural technological systems fried by the massive electromagnetic storm. Inside the Harvester command vessel, Wei, Chen, and their surviving team members felt the ship shudder as its systems failed. Emergency lighting bathed the chamber in an eerie red glow. Through a viewport, they watched as Earth disappeared beneath a sea of electromagnetic interference. "Did we win?" Rodriguez asked weakly, nursing a wound that was likely mortal. Wei looked at the dying vessel around them, at the preserve beginning to wake from their forced slumber, at the distant blue planet now wrapped in darkness. "Not yet," she answered, her expression softening as she regarded her surviving team. "But now we have a chance." Chen moved to Sato's side, where the engineer lay dying from her self-inflicted wound. The neural connection to her sister's pod remained active, a faint smile on Sato's face as consciousness returned to her sister's eyes for the first time in years. "Was it worth it?" Chen asked gently, holding Sato's hand. "Look at her," Sato whispered, gaze fixed on her sister. "She recognizes me. She's herself again." Her breathing grew ragged, but the smile never left her face. "We did not go gently. Remember that when you tell our story." As Sato's eyes closed for the final time, the first of the preserved, a crystalline being from a world whose name was long forgotten, emerged from its pod. Others followed, moving with uncertain steps after years of forced stasis. They approached the humans not with hostility but with a recognition that transcended species, fellow survivors of the Harvester's consumption. The battle was over, but the war had just begun. Earth lay in darkness, its technology disabled, its defenses shattered. Yet for the first time since the Harvester's approach was detected, there was something that had been missing during the desperate months of fighting. Hope. 3 years after the day Earth went dark, now commemorated globally as Defiance Day, humanity had begun to rebuild. Cities across the planet bore the distinctive appearance of civilizations reborn. Ancient architecture alongside salvaged alien technology, streets lit by bioluminescent lamps derived from Harvester components, while bicycles and horse-drawn carts moved alongside vehicles powered by repurposed alien energy cells. The electromagnetic pulse damage had been partially repaired, though many advanced technologies had to be recreated from scratch. Large portions of the world still operated on pre-digital technology, giving Earth a strange retro-futuristic appearance. In some ways, the technological setback had united humanity more than any political movement ever could. Nations and corporations dissolved in the face of shared survival. The solar system bore permanent scars from the conflict. Mars remained a radioactive monument to sacrifice, its southern hemisphere still glowing at night from residual energy reactions. The debris of Harvester and human vessels formed a new ring around Earth that scientists had named the Valor Belt, visible to the naked eye as a silvery thread that reminded everyone daily of what was lost and what was saved. In what was once Geneva stood the Recovery Dome, a massive structure built around the salvaged central section of the Harvester command vessel. Inside, Dr. Chen, her left arm replaced with a prosthetic fashioned from repurposed Harvester technology, oversaw research into alien technology and biology. The mental and physical toll of her ordeal was evident in her prematurely gray hair and the neural implant visible at her temple, but her determination remained unbroken. Today we're attempting full consciousness transference, she announced to her team of scientists gathered around a neural interface connecting a preservation pod to a newly constructed organic housing. Inside the pod floated Haruka Sato, her neural readings stable after years of careful disconnection from the Harvester network. The procedure succeeded, the first of many. The preserved who were saved now helped humanity understand the composite knowledge of dozens of extinct civilizations. They formed a living library of lost species, each carrying memories and technologies that would otherwise have vanished forever. They wanted to erase us all, Chen told a group of UNSC cadets touring the facility. Instead, they gave us the greatest repository of knowledge in galactic history. Their weapons became our tools. Their victims became our teachers. In orbit, the newly commissioned UNSS Defiance launched under the command of Admiral Diane Wei. The massive vessel incorporated modified Harvester technology, its organic metallic hull gleaming in the sunlight. Wei stood on the bridge, watching Earth recede below them, the scars of battle still visible on her face. And on the planet, Admiral, her communications officer interrupted. "We're receiving the deep space telemetry now." Wei's expression hardened as she studied the data. The recovered Harvester consciousness fragments confirmed what they'd long suspected. This was merely one branch of a much larger collective. Other Harvester fleets still moved through distant sectors of the galaxy, consuming civilizations that had no warning, no defense, and no experience with the particular vulnerabilities of the enemy that humanity had now exploited. "Plot a course for the Centauri system," Wei ordered, "and notify the preserved contingent. Tell them we're going hunting." On Mars, a memorial ceremony took place at the newly constructed Olympus Monument, a towering spire built from reclaimed Harvester hull plates. It bore the names of every human who died in what was now called the Harvest War, 10 million names etched in microscopic script that spiraled up the monument's length. Beside it stood a new early warning system, built from salvaged Harvester sensor technology, its dish array constantly scanning the stars. Governor Alfarsi's daughter, Amara, now an officer in Earth's defense forces, laid a single red flower at the base of the monument. It bore an inscription written in both human languages and the scripts of extinct alien civilizations saved from the Harvester Collective. They came to harvest our uniqueness. They learned too late it was our greatest weapon. The ceremony concluded as the recovered Harvester scout ship Redeemer broke orbit, its hull repainted with Earth's colors. Its crew included a mix of humans and liberated preserved, each bringing unique perspectives and abilities to the mission. Captain Miguel Rodriguez, his body now half cybernetic from injuries sustained during the final battle, addressed his crew from the command chair. 3 years ago, we were prey, he told them, his voice carrying the metallic undertone of his vocal implants. Today, we become hunters. Our mission isn't just to find other civilizations in the Harvester's path and warn them. It's to bring together a coalition that can end this threat forever. As the Redeemer engaged its FTL drive, reverse-engineered from Harvester technology, humanity took its first steps beyond victimhood to becoming the protectors of the galaxy against a threat they understood better than anyone. In the final moment of the ceremony, a young cadet ran breathlessly into Dr. Chen's lab. "Doctor, the deep space array just detected an unknown signal. It matches none of the Harvester patterns, but it's definitely artificial." Chen looked up from her work, brushing a strand of gray hair from her face. "Origin." "That's the thing," the cadet said, excitement overtaking protocol. "It's coming from beyond the Perseus arm. It's a first contact signal, and it's addressed to us specifically." Chen exchanged a look with Haruka Sato, who had become her primary research partner. "They know we defeated the Harvesters," Sato said quietly. "We're not alone in this fight anymore." Chen activated the communication array, and as the signal resolved into a complex pattern of light and sound, the greeting of a civilization humanity had never encountered, she smiled for what felt like the first time in years. "No," she agreed, her eyes reflecting the dancing lights of the alien message. "We never were." The end.